I recently posted an edited clip of deadmau5 talking about pre-recorded DJ sets. That video actually went semi-viral. I had people take and create shorts out of it and post it on their own channels. Some of those shorts got like millions of views. So it created a lot of interesting controversy in the EDM world about pre-recorded DJ sets. Are they okay or not? And in this video, we're going to react to this great conversation with Afrojack and Laidback Luke, two incredibly talented artists and incredible DJs as well. And there's a lot of unique things in this conversation that I like, talking about the pros and the cons of pre-recorded DJ sets.
Yay. Welcome to my studio.
What's up, everyone?
We got Laidback Luke in the house.
So we're here to solve some issues, I guess. Well, we don't have any issues, but there's a lot of things online about DJs and what DJs do. And I remember firing out this tweet, condemning people with like playlists and everyone. Zed jumped into the conversation, but Afrojack.
What did he say?
Well, hey.
As a side note, by the way, I might as well say this. This video was recorded a while ago. This was September 8th of 2017. So this actually was way before I posted that deadmau5 video. Might as well say that. But I remember seeing this on Twitter of it being super heated, like, are pre-recorded sets not real DJing or not, et cetera, right?
Hi, Zed. No, he was very honest about it, and he said he has a set list, a playlist that he uses every single night. And my reply to him was, well, then in my opinion, you're not a DJ, but you're an artist or you're a band. Now, I know you're a real DJ. I've known you coming up.
Well, if I want to be.
Coming up, working your way up, playing shitty clubs, playing every single night.
There's two perspectives, like you said. You have what Zed does, which is proper preparation, which allows for an amazing other feat to be accomplished when you look at live production. And there's the other extreme, which is you, which is like freestyle DJing and some.
So that's a really big point that he's making, and I know deadmau5 talked about that, is the actual production thing. Now, what's crazy though is, like I said, this was posted in 2017. This is years and years ago. Now, technology's moved a lot, especially with EDM being massive now when it comes to stage production, that there are now there's a lot of incredible software out there, and people too, who, if you have someone like Laidback Luke, I was just saying, who's completely live in the moment, or someone like Zed or Afrojack, being almost everything pre-planned, you could still actually have a pretty solid stage production show. Obviously, I think things being pre-planned is still light years easier for a stage production, but he's bringing up a good point when it comes to that, like deadmau5 mentioned, if you want an amazing stage production, having things being pre-planned is, of course, significantly easier and better for a bigger show.
DNC stuff here, a little bit of scratching, like next level. The way I do it, like, it's in the middle. So when I have to play Tomorrowland, I have an hour to play. And if I don't plan it properly, it could be that I forget to play 10 feet tall. If going into that, being a respected artist, being booked on such a high bill, with so much marketing and promotion, it is sort of your responsibility to those fans and to Tomorrowland to prepare a set that will give them everything they could expect of you as an artist.
So that, I think, is an amazing point, because I sometimes think about this, which is really interesting, that there's a lot of, I don't want to use the word hypocrisy, although that's like a bit of an intense word, but I think that's the closest word that I can think of, where when it comes to DJing, someone's like, oh, I pre-planned my sets. People are like, oh, this is not real DJing, EDM is not real music. Yet if a rock band says, we're going to pre-plan our set, like Afrojack saying, in order for us to hit the right songs, make sure we give the fans what they want, people are like, yeah, that makes sense. You pre-plan your show. Or another big thing that's probably going to be brought up here is, if a DJ has everything pre-planned, people are like, oh man, this is not real music, they're not really performing. Yet if a singer lip syncs, I think, even though people don't like that, I think people give it a little more like, well, they already sang the song. They're saving their voice for the next show. They can't be expected to sing every single night. Yet if a DJ does it, people are like, oh, that's bad, right? Now, granted, you could argue that, yes, I think singing every night, I think, is way more stress on your vocal cords, of course, than, DJing, whatnot. So I do think there is a kind of like that almost physiological issue. But it's interesting how people's perspectives change when it's electronic music versus every other genre. And it's interesting, like this point he's making, like, I think pre-planning isn't a cop-out to not DJ well. It's in order for you to plan effectively for the best show possible.
How does that work? So does this mean in an hour set you have 15 minutes of not doing anything? Or
No. Everything I do is I try to make all mashups. So first, when I look at Ultra, I start 2 weeks in advance. Then we also had the live thing. Actually, I have a record coming out this Friday called No Tomorrow with Belly and OT Genesis. Yay!
Plug
Which
right
we
here.
performed live at Ultra. To do all that live stuff in that hour and to also make sure that production is on point, that we have enough special effects, to make sure that everything is right, I need to prepare with the whole team. And those people need to know when they need to run on stage. So for that hour,
That's actually
everything is...
That's a good. I never even thought of that. That's a really good point. You know, I mean, granted, you could like give some type of motion or maybe have some type of cue, but he has a good point that he's like, look, he's like at this minute mark or however they probably do it, that people have to be prepared, especially for like live singers or, you know, however we did the live production, that they have to be prepared in advance, you know?
completely prepared. Every mix, every mashup, every a cappella, I have everything ready. And then I have to cut it up. And then you take it back, you put it on USB plug, and you play by order. So it's the simplest thing when it comes down to DJing, but the preparation of it is like a whole nother level.
You are still working on stage. You are not just pushing buttons.
No. Okay. But
So that's a, I know I keep like jumping in now with this, but that's, I think, a good point is I think there is a spectrum where you have completely live improv DJing, which Laidback Luke does. He's like he's a phenomenal DJ and turntablist. But then you have people who like actually have completely, and this is a whole thing itself, a full pre-recorded set where they hit play and it's an hour long, already pre-mixed, and they just make stuff up on the stage and they go through the motions, you know. And then you have people in the middle, like Afrojack saying, he's like, look, he's like, on my USB drive or my thumbstick or whatever, it's like song 1, song 2, so there's an order, but he still has to actually go through it. Similar to like a band, yeah, they may have songs in order, but they still have to actually perform those songs, right? And so I think there is kind of like a spectrum when it comes to this, for sure.
the thing is that like a lot of people do not understand when it comes down to this kind of preparation. This is my way of working. There's other people that have a full set list into Ableton, and that's their show. Like, I'm not gonna say like they're not DJs or like whatever the perception of.
So that's actually a good point I never thought of, that if let's say you're using something like Serato or Tractor or CDJs versus Ableton, it is interesting that in Ableton, I mean, this could be a whole other subject for a whole other video. DJing in Ableton, I personally think, can be more limited. It depends, I guess. It can be more limited, can be more freeing. There's a lot of pros and cons to it and stuff like that. But he has a good point that I've seen a lot of DJs use Ableton to DJ, and it seems like a lot of them who do, it's beyond pre-planned, pre-recorded, and, you know, yeah, they might be able to put in a drum sample here or take it out or do certain things, but it's way more pre-planned in a sense, you know. So yeah, that gets very tricky.
DJ
though.
is, but that's not the DJing that you and I come from. That's not the actual form of mixing and BPM matching, etc., etc. But when you're looking at current technology, you have to think about how far is pre-mixed or not. Of course, doing like putting a mix on for 1 hour, that's bull.
Yeah.
How far can you go in your preparations? You can make cue points, you can make loop points, you can already know the BPMs. Is it bad to use syncing if you also know that 0.8% plus on a 128 BPM record makes it a 129 BPM record?
That's
So syncing, that's definitely a subject for a whole other video. I definitely got to do a video about syncing. In case you're curious, I'm a massive fan of using sync for all my DJs out there. And that's something that's a hill I'm willing to die on, so to speak, for a few different reasons. But we'll save that for a different video. But yeah.
Sorry.
We can pretend not to know and just freestyle, which is what I do at clubs, because then I can actually do fun DJing. But for the live show,
that's actually a subtle thing he said. Like Deadmau5 said, you know, if like you're DJing, like he said, like Tomorrowland or Ultra, I mean, you're on a big stage production where having things pre-planned makes more sense. However, and I've seen Afrojack live before. He's an insanely good DJ. If you're DJing a club where, you know, there's not a lot of things happening all at once that's connected to what you're doing, you know, it depends on what you're doing. Like as Deadmau5 said, if you're doing a big stage like EDC, I think having things be more pre-planned makes more sense, as opposed to, like, say, if you're DJing a nightclub, you have a little bit more wiggle room where you can actually do maybe more creative stuff, as he's saying.
When there's so many people coming and you have so many different kinds of crowds to cater to, I'd rather prepare something that everyone want to love and gonna love with crazy mashups and crazy next level stuff they never heard before than just go there and figure it out. I was playing 4 decks, 3 records at the same time, a cappella, samples, loop, reloop, pitch up, whoop, echo, go, and 3, 2, 1, go with the mic and then jump. Doing all that stuff. And the only thing I read back on 1001 track list is Afrojack mashup.
Welcome to my life.
Yeah.
With your DJ experience, obviously you know how to read a crowd. If I pre-plan stuff, I'll notice that if I'm in front of a crowd, the temperature is different, the crowd is different, my decks are different.
So this is actually, I don't think they're going to, I mean, obviously I'm not sure where they're going to go with this, but this is a really unique point they're talking about with, you know, the negative aspects of things being pre-planned. I remember I saw Blau talk about this. Who's like arguably one of the biggest mashup artists of all time. Obviously has his own original records too. But he mentioned that for him, when he pre-plans his sets, which he does a lot, he's like, look, pre-planning's harder. And this has happened to me as a DJ. Any DJ knows this, that you go into a gig, and this happened to me, I remember at one festival, I actually performed at Swanee Halloween, and I remember I was like, all right, I'm going to plan to do like funky, jazzy stuff, maybe a slight bit of house, but not really. And the second I started DJing, I realized people don't want to hear funky, jazzy stuff. They want to hear me more glitchy, grimy, glitch hop style stuff, and it crushed the crowd, right? And so if I had pre-planned that set of what I thought people wanted to hear, and I performed it, not only would I have been wrong, but I would be in it. There's nothing I could do. And Justin Blau talked about this, where he's like, pre-planning a set can sometimes be harder because you really have to think, what is the crowd going to want? To me, I mean, different DJs maybe have different perspectives. I've always been an improv DJing. I've never pre-planned anything. I take Porter Robinson's approach, which I liked. I heard this somewhere with Porter Robinson, that he performs, he used to do this. I don't know if he does this anymore. The first, I think, 3 songs out live or a couple songs out live, he kind of pre-plans the first or second song. That kind of gives him a judge, like a test of what the crowd's feeling. So he has like the beginning, like the first couple songs planned, and then he goes off and improvs. I kind of do that sometimes with a gig. Well, I'll be like, okay, I'm definitely gonna start with this song. Maybe this one is a second. But past that, everything else I kind of wing, because to me, pre-planning a set that's way more nerve-wracking to me. I actually think that's more work, honestly. People may disagree with me on this, and you know, I know they're going to talk about this, but like, I think the idea of pre-planning sounds way harder because if the crowd's not feeling it, you're kind of stuck, you know?
And that track at that time that I pre-planned doesn't work.
Yes.
Yeah.
You get that.
I rarely misprepare because, of course, we do a lot of gigs. We pay close attention. I pay close attention to YouTube. I watch what the other DJs are playing. I watch what's going on in America, what's going on in Europe. 9 out of 10 times, like, I don't have to change anything. But last year at Ultra, it started to rain. I was like...
Hi. You might know me from my other job, but I'm
No,
a
I
business
don't.
owner, too. Here at Once Upon a
skip
Farm,
this.
we...
Okay.
I had, like, all this stuff prepared. I was like, I can't. I just can't. I'm supposed to. I might miss a record, but whatever. And then I played Rock the House, which was not planned at all, but like that's where the DJing comes up. But
yeah, so I think I'll say this too as a side note. I think it's important for every DJ out there to know how to actually DJ. That's one thing I do want to say is like a big like thing that regardless of how you look at pre-recorded sets or not or whatever, I think you got to know how to DJ. You got to know how to beat match. That's why I think when it comes to syncing, like I can beat match by ear without the sync button. But the sync button allows me to step up my level and do more complicated things to make for a better show, right? And so I think he's making a good point where he's like, look, the pre-recorded set in this situation didn't work out, but he actually knows how to DJ, so he didn't have to be like, oh, shoot, like I'm kind of screwed now. He's like, okay, well, I'm just going to do my own thing, you know?
we can do that. Some people are not able to do this because they're not used to reading crowds, and they just think we do the show, and that's what it is. When I was 17, like I used to love the DJ skills, I used to love the productions and the records that certain people didn't have and certain people didn't have. You invited me to one of your shows. I was like, the DJing, going from that record to that record, mixing in what's gebeurd, like mixing in like weird records, like all these little tricks always excited me about DJing. But your fans will all appreciate you for it because you make it very known. My fans, I have 10% fans, the diehard core that's watching right now, thank you very much, that knows this.
I forgot about the
then I have
dab.
90% friends, they have no clue what the hell's going on. They're like,
That's
Afrojack.
you know, okay, I'm really glad he's saying this. Okay. Because for me, I haven't done this in a while. I used to release like I call them Get Buck mixes. So I had like similar to like other DJs do this, where they have like a series. I used to do like Get Buck mix number 3, number 4. So I used to have like hour-long mixes that I'd release. And that blew my mind because I would get comments of people being like, oh my God, this is like, you're such a good musician. And I listened to it and I was like, do they think I made these songs? Like, yeah, some of my songs were of course mixed in to some of these mixes, but a lot of people, I realized 90% of people didn't realize what I was doing was actually mixing other people's stuff. And don't get me wrong, some of these mixes were really good, but I think what I realized is for 90% of people, when they hear a DJ sometimes, like he's mentioning, I don't mean this in a condescending way, but I don't think they fully understand what's going on to the point where, and this is an interesting thing when it comes to DJing, and this is true for any craft, that most people take what they see at face value and enjoy it at face value, right? Like, as a side note, for example, I've heard of some photographers getting mad. I remember when Instagram was getting really big on the filters, right? This is years ago. A lot of photographers or graphic designers or photoshoppers were like, oh, this is BS. You hit a button and it creates a filter automatically. This is not real editing. This is not real Photoshop. This is not real, photography or whatever. But the hard part is like to the general public, whether someone went to Photoshop and created this beautiful filter on a photo or they hit a filter on Instagram, to 90 or 95% of people, they're probably going to look at that as the same thing and not even know, or unfortunately not even care about the difference. And as Afrojack's saying, I think if for like 90% of people, like he's saying, they don't know or probably even care if you're pre-planning a set or doing it live. Now, yes, there are people like myself, maybe like people watching, that are like, oh, I want to see a DJ set because I like the turntablism and the live performance and seeing a DJ, mix. Like one of my favorite DJs is Brett Rubin. I remember seeing him live, which is great, by the way. It was in Venice Beach, on the beach, free live beach show in LA as the sun was setting. You couldn't beat it. Like you bring like drinks, or you weren't supposed to, but we did. But like, you kind of like relax. And I remember seeing him perform and watching him DJ, and I was blown away by the turntablism of it. And it's funny because I was with friends who were like, this is a great set. And I'm like, yeah, look what he's doing. They're like, I'm not gonna lie, man. I just see a bunch of buttons. I have no effing idea what he's doing, but it's cool to see you being invested of the technicalities of what he's doing, right? But for 90% of people, they don't care. They just want a good show.
His music.
Fair enough. Yeah.
So when I'm going up there and preparing or not preparing, the only thing which always like has a pressure on me at all times is how do I make my hardcore fan base proud, but still create something that is understandable for the basic Las Vegas crowd. People that are going for Vegas for the first time, they just want to have a party, get drunk, yay. Sometimes I'm one of those guys too. I don't always go to the club to hear some next level DJing. Sometimes I just want to have a good party. Or if I would go see Zed, like I would expect a great show. Looking back at it from a 17-year-old perspective.
I mean, you were one of those 10%.
I was one of those 10%, exactly. If I would go to Tomorrowland and I wouldn't be in my position, I know how difficult it is to get there. I know how many people click the buy link when the tickets become available. It's millions of people. So if I would get a ticket, I would go see everything. And then when I would go see X1 and Grosso, I want them to play Reload. I'm going to sing along to the top of my lungs. And if they don't play the original drop, I'd get pissed off.
Fair enough.
Or if they would forget to play it, I would get pissed off.
Uh-huh. I get you.
So that's the 90% perspective. And then the 10% perspective would be me whining about people not DJing.
Okay. So
I will say on that, because I know, as a quick note, I think I've noticed for myself, and I've seen this with other people, that I think in the beginning, when I first started DJing, I hated any concept of pre-recorded sets. I was like, that's BS, it's not real DJing. And I think over time, I've come to understand it more, especially after performing at different venues where I've seen the stage production, behind the scenes. I know nothing about it, but just understanding more of the full picture of what goes on for a show, and also understand that, like, as an artist, if you pay your dues and you know how to DJ and you're pre-planning things, like he's saying, for that 90%, I've started to be like, I understand now more the context, because at the end of the day, and I've mentioned this before in other videos, a lot of people forget, when you're an artist, you're a business. And if you're not delivering on what people paid for when it comes to their product, the product being your performance or your music, that's not the best business move, right? And it sounds kind of weird to bring up like business when it comes to that, but it's money being thrown. It's people, working hard to be able to pay for that ticket, like you mentioned, and there's millions of people going and blah, blah, blah.
kid for a moment. You coming up, you know, having done all of it and everything, and then, you know, going up. So now you have kids that are skipping that, and that are pre-prepping their sets because they can't DJ.
They're not DJs.
Is it okay for them to, just like you, prep sections of their sets? And do you think they're rightfully there? How about that?
If you sell the tickets, you're rightfully there. It's a really simple business matter.
Yeah.
Promoter needs to sell tickets to make money. Promoter books artists. If artist sells enough tickets, he's worth his money to the promoter, and the people that buy the tickets to see their favorite artist. But
Yeah, so you know what's actually an interesting thing that he brings up, which I've not talked about in any video because it could be a very unique topic, is influencers. Like, we've all heard of famous people or influencers or whatever becoming DJs, and it's tough because the musician in me says, oh, that's BS. And don't get me wrong, there are DJs out there, or there are famous people out there who became DJs who actually respect the craft of DJing. Shaq, prime example of this. The entire EDM community loves Shaq, respects him. He honors EDM and DJing for the craft that it is. However, there are definitely other influencers out there that I personally feel are in it just for the money. But it's tricky because the business person in me then says, well, look, if this one big influencer can immediately sell out a show because of he or she's following, and then this other person's a good DJ, but they can maybe only fill half the venue, it does make some sense from a business, purely financial accounting perspective, whether I like it or not, that, yeah, the influencer is going to make more sense to a promoter into a venue.
it needs to be really clear for all those DJ fans out there that actually care about DJing. These people are not necessarily DJs.
What do you enjoy more? Is it the big shows or is it the impromptu club sets?
Playing a really big stage, especially when you're talking about the major festivals, because everyone's watching and they will talk about it for weeks after, and everyone's watching the set later online. You're not just performing for those people, you're also performing for people that are watching the live stream, and you're performing for the people that are going to be watching this. You're not just DJing one time, you're DJing the best of your possible ability ever at that time. You have to. That's the pressure. So when I'm there, every time I take the mic, I'm like, I better not up. I better not say something wrong. Everything is built on giving the greatest show ever. And it happens to involve a little bit of DJing. But the DJing amount is so tiny, they're like, anyone could do it. And I can make it as live as possible. Like, I can take a cappella off a mashup and then play it live. Look at me, I just played an a cappella over a mashup. But I already planned it. Doesn't matter. Yeah. And then when it comes down to the club sets, there it's different, because then you're playing for 1,000 people. You can see everyone's faces. You can
That's
see
a good
everyone
point, too.
personally.
Like, the intimacy of the venue, I think, does allow you to read the crowd more, which maybe makes it, you know, because if you think about it, like, this is a very interesting point he's making, because the bigger the crowd, if you think about it, like, take that 90%, 10% that we were just talking about, where 90% of people mainstream, 10% actually want the technicality, the bigger the crowd, the more people that are in that kind of 90%. So it's like, I think the smaller the crowd, because you can read people more, it does allow you, I think, to be more improv. But then also with like a bigger crowd, there's statistically speaking going to be more people that care less about turntablism and more about just a really good show.
And you can play whatever is right at that time. So then you're not focused on catering to millions of people. Then you're focused on catering to those 1,000 people, and only at that time. It's not recorded. It will not be seen again. It's just you and them. And that, for me, is way more fun. But I have to say, when I get to play a big festival and it's not recorded, that's also way more fun.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I say.
Does that exist now, though?
See, listening to this, I'm a bit worried. I'm a bit worried the art is getting lost. Or am I just getting old? You know, is there an art still? Should we worry about the art?
I think like the best thing would be to reinvent the art. And DJing in the club never, over the last 10 years, ever since I grew up in it, didn't have that much to do with your kind of DJing. Like the things that this man is capable of, guys, in order for an art to remain relevant, it needs to reinvent itself. So you can tell me, like, when I'm looking at these scratch videos, like, I see the sickest stuff and the coolest creative ideas. And then I see Arab music, like, pounding on these, like, MPC.
I remember this going viral when I was younger, where he did, like, his, like, what do I call it, a cover or remix? I don't even know what the right word to be, of Skrillex's remix of Cinema by Benny Benassi. It was ridiculous. I remember that went live. I went viral. Millions of views and everything. But yeah, like that, that's another really interesting point that like that's technically DJing. I've seen Arab Music live as well, and he's insanely good, but that's an interesting point, right?
And it's whatever the people want, whatever functions as entertainment and art, which will be respected.
This was Afrojack in the vlog. Thank you so much for talking to us.
So definitely a lot of really interesting points that he made. And it was kind of cool to see that these different perspectives of, how someone like Laidback Luke is an insanely good turntablist, big on improv DJing, and someone like Afrojack, pre-planning sets. And I think what's tricky, in this day and age, is there's a lot of, and every unique story for you, there's a lot of unique things I think come into play. But I think at the end of the day, when people ask me, what is DJing? Which I know it seems like a very simple question. For me, it's playing the right song at the right time. And I'll never forget this story. And this makes me, and I don't know if this is right or wrong. I honestly, and let me know what you think in the comments if you think what I'm about to tell you is right or wrong. I remember I was in college, and it was my senior year, and I was, DJing house parties. But which, by the way, as a side note, I know you just mentioned, what's your favorite thing to DJ, big festivals or whatever. I've not DJed a big festival. Like, I've DJed festivals, but I was on, like, the small, either silent disco stage or something. I've DJed nightclubs, I've DJed bars. By far, my favorite thing to DJ, house parties for sure. Because house parties, in my opinion, are the most rowdy, where you can really get improv, and you feel like that you can really explore the craft of DJing without it feeling too like structured, right? And like kind of at a house party, kind of anything goes, right? So I love house parties most. But my senior year of college, I remember I went to a bar, right? And I always usually talk to the DJ, or I try to network, or never a bad idea. And I say that to a lot of people. You never know who you're going to meet, so always meet as many people as you can when going to venues. And I remember I was hearing this DJ, and I was like, this DJ is effing killing it. I mean, every transition was smooth. He was playing every right song at the right time. The crowd was loving it. The girls were loving it especially. And I think it was Calvin Harris who said you play to the girls, not to the guys, because if the girls are happy, the guys are going to be happy, right? So like everybody's loving this DJ set. So I went up, and first off, I saw from the distance, this guy was using virtual DJ, which is weird that back in the day, I remember virtual DJ was kind of like made fun of. I first started, in case you're curious, on virtual DJ with a Newmark Mixtrack Pro. And I got a lot of people giving me hate when I go to a house party, and they'd be like, oh, virtual DJ, but I'm like, hey, it doesn't matter what software you use. If you can crush it with virtual DJ or Tracker, Serato, whatever you use, go for it. But anyway, using virtual DJ, I'm like, oh, okay. But I only saw like one deck turning. And I'm like, all right, like he's getting ready to mix something in. And then it went up, and I saw the track bar. Basically, I could see the length of the track, and I could see this gigantic timestamp. Turns out this person, I don't know how long he was DJing for. I think it was like maybe 2 to 3 hours. Ripped and downloaded another DJ's set, and I'm pretty sure removed all, like, sometimes DJs have like you're now listening to DJ public, right? I don't know if this DJ had that in their mix. I don't know who made this mix, but there was none of those kind of like taglines or whatever. And all he did was hit play on this 2 to 3. I gotta respect it. It was kind of a bold move, like bold strategy, Cotton. He hit play, and all he did was go through the motions. It was a pre-planned 2 to 3 hour long mix that crushed the crowd. Everyone loved it. It was great, yet he was doing absolutely nothing besides going through the motions. Like maybe one filter here or there, or one effect here or there. But besides that, he was doing nothing. All his movements of throwing on deck B or C or D, nope. Only deck A, that was all he was using. And we're looking at that, and I kind of gave him like a thumbs up, and he kind of was like this, and like, I don't know if he could tell that I knew what he was doing. And I don't know why, I remember for a while that bothered me. But then, the older I've gotten, I don't know, I've gone back and forth, because somebody says, okay, first off, I can't remember how long that mix was, like say 2 to 3 hours, let's say 3 hours, right? 2 to 3 hours. Half of me was like, this is BS. There could be a DJ up there, like Laidback Luke, who has the skill sets, who could actually do a live performance and honor the craft of DJing and turntablism. But then on the other end, I was like, though, he crushed the crowd. Like, if I didn't know what he was doing, I would say it was a perfect set. But for a college bar, I'm like, he did everything he should do. All the right songs at the right time. The mixing was perfect. It wasn't too smooth where people didn't know what song was happening next. And that's a big issue I find in college bars when I used to DJ them, where if sometimes you're too smooth with DJing, people don't know where one song starts and the next song begins. And sometimes that's good. Or excuse me, one song ends, one song begins. Sometimes that's good for like turntablism in certain sets. But when it comes to like a college bar, I think people sometimes want a clear-cut distinction, right? And I was like, So everything this guy was doing was the perfect type of set, right? Everything he was doing is a perfect type of set. And it did make me think, like, should like, I don't know how to even, like, describe this, but I'm like, is it good what he did? And obviously my initial answer is no, but I'm like, he still delivered, though, to the bar owner, to maybe, I don't know, to the promoter maybe who booked him or whatever, to everyone in the crowd. It was exactly what they wanted to hear at the exact right time, and he delivered, whether you agree with his approach or not, the ideal set. And I don't know why, and again, you could argue to the cows come home, which is, I don't know why is it cows? But, you know, if that was, of course, I would say that's not real DJing, and that's not DJing at all. But he did deliver. And that's always maybe a very interesting story that's always stuck with me, because like Afrojack was saying, you know, especially for these big crowds, obviously music festival and a college bar, two very different things. But I mean, for the college bar, people went in, they paid their cover, they're buying drinks, and they want to hear the music they want to hear. And he did what they wanted to do. He delivered on what they want to hear, what they want to experience. And Afrojack talking, you know, of course, he's kind of paid his dues. So I think it's a little different. Like, he's definitely paid his dues. He knows how to DJ in case something goes wrong. And with this DJ at that college bar, maybe he would know what to do if something went wrong, or maybe he wouldn't know what to do if something went wrong, right? I genuinely don't know. But it is a very interesting topic. I think at the end of the day, and this is what I say to a lot of DJs, is one, at least know how to DJ without a pre-planned set. I think that is huge. It kind of reminds me, I know this is like a side note, but I always remember this when I used to be an accountant, that my teacher said, when it comes to being an accountant on the job, of course, we use software and stuff like that. I know it seems kind of random, but he said, your goal as an accountant isn't to know exactly what the right number is. Your goal is to know when a certain number cannot be the right number, right? It's kind of like, I think this is very similar to like other aspects of life, where it's not knowing what button to hit as a DJ, it's knowing what not button to hit. Maybe a bit grammatical difference. And I think that when it comes to DJing, you know, you should at least have the wherewithal of just understanding the turntablism, the mixing, and all that kind of stuff. I think it's super, super important. And then moving from there, if like, so you start doing bigger shows and you start going into things like stage production, and you have a full-on lighting setup and a pyrotechnic setup, and you're working with people all the way in the back, you know, from the stage, and mixing engineers and the stage production engineers, then it gets to a certain level where you're like, look, I want to put on a good show. That's always the number one thing. And I think that's where maybe stage production starts to take precedence. Granted, this was years ago, this conversation they had, and I know technology's gotten better, but I think at the end of the day, regardless if you're for pre-recorded sets or not, I think one, I think they do have their place, but two, I think you got to learn how to DJ. I think there's a lot of DJs who don't. You know, I know they were just talking about that near the end. It's a complicated topic. What do you think?